Okay, welcome back to the ITSM brief. ITSM, of course, IT or Information Technology Service Management brief, where I discuss ways medical practices can continually improve upon their existing technology without having to break the bank, or ways to buy new technology without having to break the bank, and just give you overall IT strategy, design, transition, operations, and continuous service improvement tips. Today, I've done a lot today, but right now we're going to talk about, excuse me, how to avoid writing a big fat check for your next EHR server or your IT infrastructure upgrade for your medical practice. And this is a sensitive topic because what you have is you have IT people, whether it be internal or external, trying to explain to business people why they need to buy something new or upgrade something or whatever the case may be. And typically, it's always not a very nice conversation. It could be a battle, tempers flare. The business people, they're more like, well, didn't we just upgrade this stuff? Why is it not working like it's supposed to? It's not fast. It's too slow. And the technology people go, well, that's because a new firmware, this and that, or whatever the case may be. What the IT people have to understand is that the business people are looking for ways to get the return on investment for their for the purchase of the IT hardware, software, and services. And the business people need to understand that the IT people can't do anything about the changes in the technology. Now, there's things that they can do to better manage the technology. And this is what my ITSM brief is about, is try to help you manage technology. I'm not going to tell you how to fix a server or how to fix a router or whatever the case may be. I'm going to tell you how to manage your IT. That's why it's called the ITSM or IT Service Management Brief. So what you need to do is find an interpreter who can interpret geek and who can also interpret business. So they speak geek and they speak business, and then the interpreter, if you will, the IT interpreter, tells the business side, it tells the geeks the business language of, hey, we need to be able to cut costs, reduce downtime, but we want the fastest possible speed out of this system. And the IT people need to say, okay, here's how you do it. And that interpreter tells the business people the geek translation. So the geek translation and the business translation have to come somewhere. But I'm not going to focus too much on that. That's a whole topic. I'm going to be speaking at a key. I'm going to be doing a keynote on that very topic next year to some Fortune 500 companies, because believe it or not, medical practices, small to medium-sized businesses, the large businesses have the same issues that you do. I spoke to several large banks in November of 2016 this year, and they had the same issues. TIA Cref was there, PricewaterhouseCoopers were there, Wells Fargo, BB&T, a Premier, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Red Cross. So these are large organizations sitting in here, little old me, tell them, how do you communicate your IT strategy to your senior level? And it's the same thing. I don't care if you're a multi-trillion-dollar company or you're a multi-million-dollar company. It's the same thing, communications. But anyway, that's another topic. Let's go ahead and talk about this one. Excuse me. We're going to talk about how to avoid writing that big cash-draining check, for your next EHR system or your server or your IT infrastructure. And of course, most people would go, well, you're going to talk about cloud computing. Yes, I am. Excuse me, because the de facto standard of the way of business is going toward the cloud or hosted somewhere else, because I get a lot of times when I'm dealing with medium-sized medical practices, say 1,000 users or 500 users or employees, 1,000 employees, a couple hundred docs or 100 docs. The chief level executive officers ask me about ways to reduce the footprint of the infrastructure. And because they need the room for, an exam room or they need the room for more people, or whatever the case may be, because at the same time, their revenue cycle management says to them, hey, look, we need to make more revenue, and the only way to do that is to see more patients or do this and that. So they ask me all the time, hey, how do we reduce our dependency on having such a large server room or footprint for all of these servers, routers, and switches? And there is a way to do that. Excuse me. Again, that's a whole nother topic. But the point of the matter is, going to the cloud is the beginning of that. And it is my belief that one day there will only be several appliances in your building, in your on-premise building, that actually just link you up to the internet or link you up to some network that's not located at your facility, whether it be in another state, another town, down the street, whatever the case may be, so that you can reduce the cost of the power, the heat, the HVAC, cabling, and all that good jazz. Where these devices are just routers and firewalls and backup and disaster recovery appliances that can compress your entire environment, and if it needs to be unzipped, if you will, so you can zip your entire environment into some kind of a file that, like an XML or some kind. I'm actually working on something myself called Jacobi, that I have a lot of interest from some big government entities on this invention. I actually got a patent pending on it last year or the year before that, I can't remember, but I took it off the market because I realized, people told me this, but I come to the realization that you have to show everything that the way your invention works, and I didn't want to do that. And anyway, I do still believe, though, that some kind of compression technology is going to exist or may already exist, that you can compress your entire environment, and all you need is a few appliances, and it's going to connect you somewhere off net to the cloud or whatever you want to call it, and whatever fancy name they come up with. And all that's going to be for is disaster recovery purposes. And when you need it, you could be able to turn it on and turn it off. Now, on a smaller level, there's a company right now I know of named Infrascale that has a little appliance that can do similar to that. It can boot in the cloud or it can boot on premise. The number of VMs you need to boot up in order to keep operating. And they have a what's called a push button failover system, which is pretty cool. As a matter of fact, they got the Gartner Group Cool Award not too long ago. Cool technology, and it's really, really cool. It really is. So, all right, I'm getting way off topic here. So we're going to talk about cloud computing here for medical practices, to be able to either put your EHR fully, partially, hybrid model for your EHR or your infrastructure itself, infrastructure as a service. I have clients that I'm putting on that where they don't have hardly anything in their on-premise. They just have, similar to what I said, which is, a bunch of routers and firewalls and maybe a few servers to replicate in a hybrid cloud model their actual operational infrastructure. So, if you're planning a network upgrade or expanding one within, let's say, the next 6 months, you might be able to save yourself quite a bit of money and give yourself a more productive workplace by switching to cloud-based networking instead of on-premise. Now, I am not 100% in love with the cloud in the sense of doing 100% cloud. I think that's ridiculous. And that's just my opinion. And here's my beef with that. If you do 100%, the reason why you're doing cloud is to save money and this and that. But you always should remember, you never want a single point of failure. Now, what cloud providers are going to tell you, well, we're not a single point of failure. We have multiple locations all throughout the country. And by the way, if you're, medical practices, make sure you pick a cloud provider that your data never leaves the U.S. You'll be in a lot of trouble if it does. And hopefully you'll vet these cloud service providers out. I have another discussion that I'll be posting soon on 7 things to ask your cloud service providers to make sure that you don't get yourself in trouble and get your patient data exposed. But there's kind of 3 or 4 different type of cloud models where you can have a public cloud service offering. That's basically hosting. All of it's really hosting. You got your public cloud, your private cloud, and your hybrid, right? Or your social cloud, if you will. That's where Shadow IT, you can look on my YouTube or either on the web page, on the blog. We just got done talking about Shadow IT. Those kind of systems are really dangerous if you don't monitor them. The systems themselves are not dangerous, but the application of those systems within a medical practice can be dangerous if you're not careful. So, don't look at putting everything in one place. Well, I'm going to put everything over in the cloud. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Not right now. The safest approach, the most reasonable approach, and right there in the middle between an OpEx and a CapEx model is going to be a hybrid cloud, right? Where you're paying a subscription fee for certain critical services that have to be up, and you're using the cloud, if you will, as your secondary site. Okay, and you have that's going to be your OpEx model, and your CapEx model might be an OpEx too. If you're leasing, it's going to be some equipment on-prem. One of the things that a lot of people are going to is Office 365, and they have an Exchange server on-prem, and then they cut over everything over to the cloud. Well, I kind of like the hybrid approach there too. Some people don't, but I do, just to be safe, because I'm the most paranoid CIO you'll ever meet, probably. So, anyway, I'm not 100% on the cloud, 100%, 100% cloud. I just don't think that's a wise move. However, cloud computing is not a good fit for every company anyway. If you don't, get all the facts and fully understand the pros and the cons, you could end up making a poor decision, a very poor decision, and an expensive one. You'll really, really regret later because, for instance, if you have Hyper-V, if you have VMware. Now, Microsoft is supposed to be fixing this. I don't know if they have or not, so please excuse me, Microsoft, if you're listening to this. If you go into a Microsoft environment with VMware, you have to convert to Hyper-V in order for it to work properly. Now, I hadn't checked lately on that. That may be fixed, but it was a problem at least 3 months ago, or maybe 6 months ago, when I was working with a client trying to migrate their data to Azure. If you go to Amazon, for instance, going to Amazon's great. They're the biggest and most say the best. But there are some issues there that take place that you do a lot of planning for. And then Google is trying to get back in the game with healthcare, because for the longest time they wouldn't even sign a BAA with you, whereas Microsoft does and Amazon does, and I think Google does now. So a lot of planning has to go into this, a lot of preparation, tooling, testing, the whole 9 yards. And you know what I always say, if you've been listening to me, you need to have 5 environments anyway. You don't have to worry about all of this stuff. You have your live environment that you only touch doing change management and release management type of protocols. You have your backup environment. You have your archive environment for healthcare, especially your DR or your disaster recovery environment, and your test environment. So your test environment is your sandbox where you play with these things and test them out before you do anything with patient data or with your systems, so that you don't experience a lot of downtime. With all that being said, some clients, for them, cloud can actually lower their IT costs. I've seen it anywhere from 28 to 62% or more. And those sound like off numbers, but that's about what I've seen in my practice, in my business practice, my consultancy. So, this will greatly improve the ability for their remote workers to connect and work. Now, why is that important? Because in a healthcare situation, if you have a hospital, for instance, obviously you're going to be on some kind of a grid. You're going to be having a relationship with the electric company and all that good jazz, and you're going to have some government assistance. But for small medical practices, what do? Your generator may work for you for a while, but what do you do when you need to see patients? Well, in North Carolina here, where I'm at in Wilmington, we have hurricanes where we don't have big storm issues other than the flooding. I mean, the flooding just gets incredible around here. But what happens, though, is you still can let the administrative staff work by using some type of cloud computing. And if your internet's down for your typical internet, there's 3G, 4G, LTE that you can put inside of your routers that will, do HSRP and hot swap routing protocol to get your switches and your routers back up. So there's a whole lot I can talk about that. So I don't really want to get too involved in that, So, the cloud can help you and get your entire infrastructure into a position and genuinely solve a number of technology problems you've been trying to work around for years. So, which is right for you? Is the cloud right for you? Is part of the cloud right for you? Public cloud versus private cloud versus hybrid cloud? Let's talk about some of the pros and cons real quick. Oops, I went the wrong way. There we go. So, pro number one, you never have to upgrade your systems again. You don't have to do it. The back end does. You're basically having an IT company in the cloud that's taking care of everything for you. Let's take Office 365, for instance. Me personally, I love it. I just love it because I don't ever have to put a disk. Well, I don't even have a drive on my Mac, but I don't ever have to put a disk in to upgrade. They do the upgrades in the cloud, and they know what they're doing. So they have teams of people that all they do is upgrade those systems. I know one client of mine was looking at doing next gen in the cloud. Well, there's private companies that can host next gen for you. Next gen talked about using Dell to do it, but the problem is what you have to be careful with is, and I'll get to this in the cons, is careful planning. And since next gen is such a beast of an EHR, and the SQL back end of it can be very, very robust. But if you're using it in the cloud and you have providers that go, hey, I hit enter and it's taking 5 seconds. You want to make sure you do that. You go back to your environment, those 5 environments, live or production, backup, archive, DR, and test. You test this stuff before you actually apply it within your live environment. So when you're hosting in someone else's cloud and not your own, VM cloud, if you will, it's the equivalent of renting an apartment. Okay, you'll get all the benefits of living there, but none of the responsibility for maintenance. All you pay for all that. In fact, one of the reasons cloud computing can save your medical practice a lot of money is that the cloud provider is pooling, quote unquote, the money of many organizations to host and maintain the environment themselves. Meaning you're paying for only a fraction of what it would cost for you to host and maintain the same environment yourself. And that's where those above 50% cost savings really, really mean a lot in any cost saving, because most of you out there, if you have an IT department or a server room or whatever the case may be, you look at it as a cost center. So my goal, and one of the things that I help my clients do, the larger clients at least, the ones who have large IT departments, 10,000 employees, is help them turn their IT systems from a cost center to a profit center. Because I help those larger organizations shop out their actual EHR systems and their IT support and turn them into a profit. But that being said, you can, if you're not trying to do that, you still can cut those costs down, to skinny numbers by using the cloud. So that's one of the pros here. So you're only paying for a fraction of it, just like in not a hotel, but I said an apartment, where you're sharing the renter, the apartment owner is pooling the resources, and you're only paying a fraction for it. So that leads into the next pro, which is lowering the IT costs. This is probably the single most compelling reason why medical practices or any company choose to move their network partially, like I said, public, private, hybrid, to the cloud. Not only do you save money on software licenses, but also on hardware. Like you don't have to buy any more servers. And some people don't even have to buy any workstations because they use desktop as a service. So your desktop is in the cloud. So all you carry around is really nothing other than your personal device. There are organizations that have BYOD, bring your own device, and everything's in the cloud. That way you don't have to worry about someone taking your data and stealing it. The only thing with that, obviously, is the camera phones and taking pictures and stuff like that. That's going to be. I'd love to see who's going to come up with a solution for that. I don't know how they're going to do it. How do you disable the camera without violating privacy laws if it's their own device? And then if you buy equipment, then you're defeating the purpose. So it's like 6 in one hand, half a dozen in another. I don't know. So any hardware, or even the IT support and upgrades. Like I said, you have a IT department taking care of that system now. It's not exclusively off hands. There are some things you may have to do, but for the most part, 90+%, you're not going to have to do a whole lot when you put your system in the cloud. In fact, we save our clients a lot of money. I mean, every time we put a client in the cloud, we save them above 50% on what they're doing. So let me just throw that little commercial in there while I'm thinking about it. Another pro actually is you have anytime, anywhere access. The ability to access your desktop and your applications from anywhere on any device is priceless. If you travel a lot, if you have multiple sites, I support physician-owned multi-location practices, for instance. And if you a lot of those doctors travel, a lot of the patients, a lot of the administrative staff travel. There's training situations, but if you travel a lot, or you have any traveling employees, or prefer to have, use an iPad instead of a laptop, or whatever the case may be, while traveling to your house, there's providers who do their charts at home because they don't have time to do them at work and they want to get home, so they can be around their family. Cloud computing is going to give you the ability to work from any of these devices. And anytime, anywhere access has always been something. I had a guy tell me one time, I don't know, what was that, about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, that term played out. Anytime, anywhere access, that term played out. I don't think that's ever going to play out. Anytime, because we're now in a mobile first, cloud first world. It's got to be mobile and it's got to be in the cloud. Mobile and cloud. You're not gonna stop hearing from that until we get to a point where we can speak through the air and pull up holographic computer systems. I believe that'll happen one day, by the way. I know people think I'm crazy for thinking that, but anyway. One of my pet peeves and one of the best things I like about the cloud is the next pro here, which is disaster recovery and backups. They're automated. So if you have Cerner or Epic or Next Gen, whatever the case may be, these companies are struggling with this. These EHR companies, because they will tell you because of security, and that may very well be true. My personal opinion is that it's because of revenue and profits. How are they going to get all of that money out of you when they don't have to charge you as much in the cloud? So they're going to have to grow their subscriber base some kind of way, and their licensing fees are going to have to change. That model is going to have to change. So they're struggling with that. And then some of them will tell you, well, if you don't put your EHR in our cloud, because, you can go do this yourself, then we're going to void support, or you can only choose these providers. This is something you need to have your CIO or your IT decision makers, your leaders, in talk tough with your EHR organization. And when you're signing a contract, or if you're renewing a contract, make sure your service level agreements meet your needs and not the needs of their profits. So you want to be real careful with that. But backup and disaster recovery, obviously you want to check the small print. Some will only back up your data for like a couple of days, 2 or 3 days prior. And some will waive all responsibility from backing up your security or securing your data at all. They'll say it's your responsibility. And they will take no responsibility. And you're sitting there thinking your data's being backed up and something happened. And you go, well, where's my data? And the other fear, you have to be concerned with is, and I don't think anybody out here listening has this problem, but if you don't pay your bill, they can delete your data. Make sure you look at the fine print. That's why I say having a hybrid is the best way to go. Because all a hybrid is going to, the hybrid, what it's going to do for you is you're going to have data on premise and you're going to have data in the cloud. It's just synchronizing. So if it's deleted in the cloud, so what? You have the latest copy on-prem. Or if the on-prem gets bombed or falls in the ground, so what? I mean, obviously, you don't want any people to get hurt, but you have your data in the cloud. So you have a very balanced, fail-safe system when you use a hybrid cloud. So one of the things I like about the disaster recovery is, working with a company, for instance, like Chorus 360 in Norcross, Georgia. I have used them they have a SOC, I think it's SOC 2, a data center in Norcross there. So it's a secondary site. It can be a secondary site for clients. So, and they're not the only ones. There's Peak 10 and Rackspace, and even telecom companies do this, like Windstream and AT&T. So I just chose them. I just feel like they had good people. But here's the thing. Because you are required under HIPAA 164.308 A7, A, B, C, D, and E, and 164.308 A8, which is evaluation. A7 by itself is a contingency plan, and this is a HIPAA security implementation rule. A, B, C, D, and E is A is data backup plan, B is disaster recovery plan, C is emergency mode operation plan, D is I always get this one screwed up here, tests and revision procedures, and and E is application criticality analysis, and of course 164.308 A78 is evaluation. A, B, and C are required, and A3, A7 or A8 is 164.308 A8 is required, and D and E are addressable. But anything when you see addressable, the little A, capital A, you might as well think required. But because the new level of audits that are coming, the second wave of audits that are coming in 2017, you have to have these things in place. You have to have things in writing, and you have to have it in place. Doing it in the cloud is going to make your life so much easier. That's a great pro of this. The next one is faster, cheaper to set up new employees. If you have to set up an employee, you have to provision the Active Directory, and set up an account, create an Exchange account, set up their applications. It could take an administrator, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes to do that. Whereas in the cloud, you just push a button and go, hey, boom, you're done. So you've cut costs that way, right? And it's cheaper because let's say if you're using desktop as a service. Now, this could be cheaper, it could not be cheaper. It just depends on which way you go. And you have a new employee. You can have just dumb computers, thin clients, using Citrix or whatever, or using the internet, and boom, they're there. They're already provisioned, they're already set up, they're ready to go start making you money, start seeing patients, whatever the case may be. So, and if you have a seasonal workforce or a lot of turnover, which this year, I've seen a lot of turnover in the healthcare arena. I don't know what that's all about. I'm still trying to figure that out. If you know what it is, please send me a comment. No trolls, please. I don't like trolls, or email me and tell me what you think it is. I'd love to hear from you. Cloud computing is going to help in this situation when you have a lot of turnover, though. Not only will it lower your cost of setting up new accounts, but it will make it infinitely faster. I mean, just incredibly fast. The next pro here is that, it's green technology. That means a lot to a lot of people, and it should. When you have a lot of electricity, a lot of emissions and gases, and you think about it, what we're putting into the air is incredible. So cloud computing is greener for you. I mean, it's not necessarily greener for that hosted company, that company that's hosting it, but they may provision themselves to take care of that. So it's easier for them to take that on than for you. So, it's a greener technology that will save you on power and your electric bill. You will see a huge difference. One computer may not take up a lot, but if you have hundreds of PCs, thousands of PCs and routers and firewalls and servers, you're burning up a lot of juice. Okay, and you're going to see a significant difference in your bill, your HVAC bill, because you're not having to heat and cool as much. So that's one thing. That's another pro. So if for some reason smaller companies, the power bill savings will be too small to even measure though. But larger companies with multiple servers and stuff, you're going to see a big difference, because typically that stuff is running 24/7. Which brings me to another point. With the cloud computing, you can even lower your costs even more by doing differential billing, by asking the cloud provider to say, hey, look, we don't need to be running and paying for cloud services at X time. If you're not a hospital, if you're not working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's no need to be paying your cloud provider 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Ask them about differential billing or shutting down your VMs or shutting down your system and being able to bring it back up in the current state that it was last in, so that you're not paying extra money. There's a lot more other pros, but I'm going to go ahead and get to a few cons here. The internet. Well, the internet is what makes the cloud live, but the internet is also what makes the cloud die. That's why I like hybrid computing, hybrid clouds. The internet going down is a big deal. People will ask you in a heartbeat, when is the internet going back up? Or they'll let you know first that the internet's down before they'll let you know something, that a hurricane's coming or something, While you can't mitigate that risk altogether, you can by at least having a commercial grade internet connection and maintain a second backup connection from a different provider too, by the way. You don't want to use the same provider for an internet connection if you have routing protocols like HSRP to swap over in the case of a failure, or a load balancing router to swap over. So having that secondary connection is important. But again, hybrid cloud computing, so if the internet's down, so what? If you have the right system like that one I mentioned to you before with Infrascale, you can just boot to your local device, and there your systems are with the last 15 minutes of data. So your RPO, your RTO, and your MTO are all in sync. Another concern or con of the cloud is security, data security. Many people don't feel comfortable having their data in some off-site location at all, whether it be hybrid or not. This is a very valid concern too. You should be concerned. You shouldn't trust the cloud just haphazardly. And before you choose any cloud provider, you need to find out more about where they're storing your data, how it's encrypted, and who has access to the data. Do they have, if you can, go visit their data center. Check it out. Make sure it's not in their garage or some warehouse somewhere. But believe it or not, the data is more secure in the cloud than it is on premise. Somebody can break into your place easier than they can break into a Fort Knox type of cloud center like at Microsoft or Amazon. Barbed wire fencing, security guards, all kinds of cameras, all kinds of fail-safe system, on the ground, failed over systems. You don't have all that, and you can't afford it. So just think about that. Another con is some applications have interoperability issues working in the cloud. Certain line of business applications just won't work. You have to check with your cloud service provider to make sure that they can, because let's say you have and the biggest thing here is you can host a server somewhere else and put your EHR on that server and say it's in the cloud, right? What happens is, and this actually happens, some providers will make you give them IP addresses that's on-prem, or either say, hey, look, if you have a problem and we have to work on it and it's in somebody else's cloud other than ours, you void your support. You got to read the fine print. I'm going long here, so this is a pretty long session, but let me get to the next issue here on compliance issues. But on a lot of business applications, there's a lot of them out there that don't work, and I don't want to say which ones right just yet, because all of them are making strides to get into the cloud. So just check with your cloud service provider. Compliance issues. You got to be careful with HIPAA compliance issues. If your cloud service provider is not willing to sign a business associate agreement, there's no further step to take. You don't deal with that firm. You just don't deal with them. There are a number of laws and regulations, also such as Graham-Leachy, Bliley, Sarbanes-Oxley, or SOX. And I already talked about HIPAA. That require organizations to control and protect their data and certify that they have knowledge of and control over who can access their data. Remember, in HIPAA, the main law is data should only be accessed or seen by the person or people that need them to do their job. Okay? One of the pet peeves I have here is that internet service providers never ever get penalized for HIPAA violations. It's their system that was really breached through the internet. The hacker didn't just osmosis into your system lest they work there. And the internet companies just seem to get away with murder, if you will. So I have a problem with that. Luckily for them, I'm not a lobbyist, because I would definitely be lobbying for them to have more responsibility, because I think we'd see a lot less hacking. It's in their benefit, because and then even in the cloud portion, it's in their benefit, because you need bigger pipes, right? So, many cloud providers won't tell you specifically where their data is stored. So you want to make sure for sure. And again, you can't let it leave the U.S. It can't leave the U.S. period, unless you have an international company and you already have lawyers taking care of that stuff for you. But for small medical practices who just work here in North Carolina or throughout the United States, you don't work with a cloud provider just because you think it's cheap. And you need to get cheap out of your minds, because cheap is going to land you with fines and in jail in some situations. I had a company call me up wanting me to do something, a medical company, and they wanted me to do something I felt like was untoward. And the guy argued with me about how incompetent I was or afraid I was to do the project. And all I asked him was, have you signed a BAA with this cloud provider? And he said, we don't need to. So I said, well, look, I can't help you. And the guy got mad at me. But listen, I am a stickler for those kind of things, and I just won't move and budge on them, because the last thing you want to do, I know I want to do, the last thing you want to do is be on the HIPAA wall of shame. You can continue to work, but your reputation is going to be trash. Especially when more people start finding out what the HIPAA wall of shame is for. And when more people find out that, you're not protecting their data, they may have certain situations they don't want anybody to know about. Like the company, and I can't remember the state, they sent out all these thousands of postcards. They were a behavioral health practice, and they sent out these thousands of postcards saying to the people, thank you for getting your X treatment with us. Had the person's name on it and the medical condition that they were dealing with on a postcard. Yeah. So you want to be careful. So hopefully I've given you enough to go by, or to get with your IT department, your CIO, your IT consultancy, or your IT person. And if not, just give me a call or send me an email, and I'll see what I can do to lead you in the right direction. My email is Manuel, Manuel, at mwlconsulting.com. Or you can email me. I'm sorry, you can go to my website, mwlconsulting.com, and this ITSM brief will be there. There's many more. You can check me out on YouTube, on connect with me on LinkedIn, and follow me on Twitter, and if connect with me on Facebook. We can have conversations, and I love to hear from you. So until next time, take care, and I wish you all the success in the world.